Hundreds have made the trip to Kuta to honour the victims of the Bali bombings on the 20th anniversary. But what was an incredibly moving ceremony shifted when a documentary was shown on the big screen, which included the aftermath of the attack and showed images of the bombers and the bomb maker. Minister for Aged Care and Sport, Annika Wells, and the editor of Stellar and Body and Soul magazine, Sarah Lamarquin, join me now to discuss. Annika, we're just learning about this morning. To see, if you're a survivor and you've gone over there for that ceremony, to then see the faces of those bombers come up on the screen must have been so triggering for so many.
Yeah, an horrific experience for anyone to have to go through, particularly at what should be such a sacred memorial where you remember the loved ones that you lost in such awful circumstances. No wonder they're upset. I feel upset for them, and I want them to know that the Australian government stands ready to assist anybody who was distressed at that service.
Yeah, and I think we had Damien Ryan, who's our reporter over there, explaining it, that, you know, the Indonesians showed this, and just to give it context, Sarah, their idea was saying, see, look, we went and we arrested those responsible. But if you're over there and you see that, it's still pretty traumatic, isn't it? Just being reminded of those faces of evil.
Well, traumatic is absolutely the right word for this, Ali, and I absolutely accept that there probably was no malicious intent and was probably the best of intentions on the part of the organisers and those in Indonesia, but it was absolutely the wrong decision. And how we've come to understand trauma is something that we've made a lot of progress within quite a short time, and certainly in the 20 years since the horrors of Bali, we really understand the profound impact of post-traumatic stress disorder and the enduring pain felt by survivors. And any tribute should be about honouring those who lost their lives, honouring the survivors, and throwing forward to the future and the stories of resilience and mateship that were learnt that day and literally forged in fire, and the lessons that we've learnt. That's what the focus should have been. I don't think we should be talking about the perpetrators at all.
And it overshadowed what was a really beautiful ceremony. We saw many of them in Bali yesterday. A lot of people coming together, the Balinese coming together, and this unfortunately marred it for some, but overall, I mean, look at that. Incredible, wasn't it?
Really.
Well, let's talk about something else this morning, the brawl that has broken out on a flight from Melbourne to Brisbane, seen in this 9 News exclusive. So you've got passengers screaming as they tried to separate two men fighting in their seats. We're going to show you that vision in a moment. But Sarah, it must have been so terrifying for everyone else on board.
Well, it is, because I think for those of us that are flying at a time in history after the 9/11 attacks, any time anyone raises their voice or even gets up in their seat, everyone on a plane, you feel the mood change. It's very intimidating, and any sort of aggression that's happening, 35,000 feet in the air is absolutely terrifying. I think what's really interesting about this is that it dovetails at a time when the Flight Attendants Association is actually threatening industrial action, and we're having this ongoing conversation about cabin crew needing better pay. And I think there's this sort of lingering stereotype that some people still think flight attendants, or they call them hostesses or hosties, are glorified waitresses, and of course they're not. They're actually there to do a really important job. God forbid there's a safety issue, but they're also there to regulate this sort of behaviour. I don't know why this guy was ever allowed on the plane.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a flight attendant on that flight too, trying to get involved in that is scary for everybody involved. Annika, Sarah was just touching on that. We've got Qantas flight attendants that are saying they will strike in the lead up to Christmas. I mean, it's... Look, there are reasons behind it. I guess some of them you can understand, but also I think if you're looking at going away over the Christmas period and you hear this and there's going to be more chaos at the airports, you're thinking, what next?
Isn't that example perfectly demonstrative of why flight attendants have one of the hardest jobs in Australia at the moment, given the state the airline industry is in? I represent thousands of flight crew in my electorate on the north side of Brisbane, because we have the Brisbane airport, and it demonstrates perfectly they aren't tea ladies. They're also essentially the cops, the fire rescue on the plane. They have to do so many things in what is, as you're saying, a very difficult time for the air industry. You can't fly on time at the moment. You know, you're lucky if you get your flight there. So to me, our focus should not be on whether or not the merits of the flight attendant's case. Our focus should be on what are their bosses doing about it, because at the end of the day, a strike is a very last resort because they haven't been able to come together at the bargaining table. So that's what I urge them to do for everybody, like you say, as we head towards Christmas.
Yep, hopefully it doesn't happen. Now, the big debate, to smack or not to smack. It's been reignited this morning over calls to make it a criminal offence. This is by a coalition of parenting researchers and advocates. Annika, where do you stand on this? And it's not so much whether you think you should or shouldn't smack. Should it be illegal?
Well, I think the difficulty with trying to legislate anything is that you're trying to legislate ideology here. So, I mean, I was racking my brains. I don't think I've ever smacked any of my children. And I think it's good to have the debate. It's good to get that it's actually some research out there that's led this discussion. Let's get the research on what the effects of that is out there for parents to consider in a broader context of some really interesting debates going on over in Europe about rights of the child and right to privacy online and that kind of thing. I think Europe's a bit more advanced than Australia is at the moment on that space.
So where are you on this one? Where are you on this? Should it be a criminal offence or not?
I would like them to articulate how you legislate ideology, and a criminal offence. I mean, that comes down to individual states rather than the nation.
All right, Annika's fudging. Sarah?
No, I'm definitely in favour of legislating against smacking. I think it does need to become a criminal offence. And I think the idea that you're legislating ideology is an interesting one, Annika, because arguably as recently as 20 years ago, you could say that domestic violence legislation was legislating ideology, that there was an argument that, well, you know, what happens in closed doors is okay, and, you know, it's a husband's right to sort of, you know, do whatever he has to do if there's a bit of a domestic, as we call it, and now we understand that that's illegal. I think the problem here and the fine print in this legislation will need to be, I think there needs to be a cooling off period where we make a very important legal distinction between a frustrated mum or dad who in the supermarket gives a light tap to the behind of a child having a tantrum and the parents then feeling overloaded, and a parent that's, you know, hitting their child with a wooden spoon or an implement, and it's a sustained anger. I think that we need a distinction there, but we're only actually going to bring about profound cultural change when we do legislate against it.
That's the tricky bit, right, isn't it? I mean, I think, you know, when what you're talking about is, I mean, belting a kid is abuse anyway, so it should be illegal, but that idea of your kid's about to touch a stove and you give them a smack on the hand, is that then a criminal offence? We'd love to hear your thoughts at home, so please send us an email. We'll talk about this a little bit more during the morning. Sarah, Annika, really lovely to talk to you both this morning. Thank you.